Okay, I've gone and washed everything up on our little control valve here, and I've got the new kit, the Sparex S6380 kit. Now, you may remember when this valve came out yesterday, I couldn't find a little ball anywhere, and I've been all over my bench with the magnet, and I've had a little magnet, I've had it all over under the floor, all around the workshop, and there is just no sign of it. So, it doesn't really matter. I own a spare parts shop, so in town there, I got Judy to bring me home a couple of brand new balls for it. They're 1/4 inch balls, S10901. So I'll put new balls in each check valve. That'll just cover that base, and I'll put a picture in here, and this picture is out of the 135148 manual, and you can see that it has the spring, the ball and the cap there. So but even though I didn't see it, it must have been there. I can't imagine it would have worked without it, and I can't imagine that the 135148 240 20 and all that would be very much different. So that's what we're going to do. I've cleaned everything up a little bit. The spool valve here, I've had a look at the valve, and what we have to do later, and I don't need to do it now, is open this hole up and put a new pin in there. Now, when we measure the hole in the valve here, look, we're getting, in millimetres, we're getting 4.35, and in the hole in the turnbuckle here, we're getting 4.4 thereabouts. So we measure the pin, and this is a hardened steel pin, and the pin, it hasn't worn on the pin. I can measure it up and down. Well, the wear is very minimal, but that is 3.9, what are we looking at there? 3.98, oh 7, 3.97. And so 9.7 to 4.2, 4.3, you know, we got 1/2 millimetre wear in here, and you can see it in there, and that's too much. Now, last night I was having a bit of a read. It's quite obvious there. So what appears to be the thing is that this is a hardened steel pin, and these two items here are mild steel. They haven't been hardened. So when we put it all together, that's the, can you see that? Yeah, you can. That's the movement you have before anything happens on the valve. So when the valve, it appears that the valve, if I've read it right, the valve would normally start to work at about 1.4 millimetres. So when you've got 1/2 millimetre wear in something that may only travel a couple of millimetres, well, that's why you have trouble with steering one way more than the other. Now, by adjusting the turnbuckle, if your tractor turns one way more than the other, sometimes you can adjust this turnbuckle if it's not too worn and find the happy place in the middle so it steers evenly left and right, but it probably won't be full power assist steering because the valve isn't opening all of the way. So what the plan is, I'm going to assemble the valve, and later on I'm going to sit the valve in the drill press, and look, I've done these with a hand drill out in the bush. You know, you get caught out in the bush, and I'm going to drill this out the same size as this here, and we're at a bit over 4 millimetres now. So if we had a 4.5 or a 3/16 roll pin, we can actually put a 3/16 roll pin in here. And the reason I'm saying roll pin is because it's hard. I could make a new pin. I can go and buy an aftermarket pin, but it's not going to fix the slop here. And we don't want to go and buy a whole new valve because we've got a little bit of wear here. Now, these are available. You can buy a new turnbuckle aftermarket, no trouble at all. But we probably don't need one. So I'm going to assemble it all now, and we'll run through and we'll work out what size we're drilling that later. We'll cover the ports up and just drill him through and job done. So to get this show on the road, we're going to need an oil can. I've cleaned everything with CRC brake cleaner. That's good stuff, especially for this sort of thing. You can get it up in the valves and that, and it works well. So what I'd like to start off with is the back O-ring here. Now, it fits nicely on the bore there. So the O-ring at the back, we'll try and work that down into the groove with my trusty O-ring pick. Probably started out as a scribe really, but anyway. And then we have a blunt end here that's been broken off one time. Okay. So that's sitting into the groove nicely. Now the other O-ring at the other end, we have one on the outside of this collar, for want of a better word. And then we have a thin one on the inside. We've just got to make sure that's all lined up. It's all where it should be. And that looks okay. So that one slides down onto this collar here. So, all right. In the kit, in the Sparex kit, the S6380 kit, they supply a new washer for the spring. Look, it's a little bit bigger than the other one. I'm going to use the old one because it's just a washer, you know, so I'm going to go with that. And I'm just having a look if it would matter which way it goes, and I think it does. See the slight chamfer on this side here? You can see a chamfer there, and for strength they haven't got a real, there's a very slight radius here. So the chamfer goes that way. So then we have I'll put the little spring, then the big spring, and this here, you can see the witness mark that the spring went that side and the valve did up against that side. And I don't believe it matters, but I'm just following witness marks and seeing. Now, it looks like this is going to be a bugger to put in because we've got to line it up and do the thread up and bring it all in without cutting the O-ring. So we need to get our trusty oil can. And bring that down there. Is that a sharp edge? Yeah, it is quite a sharp edge. So it would be sensible to have a little tool to pull that down nicely. So it wouldn't be hard really to cut that little internal O-ring there, and you wouldn't know until you got it back together. Okay, so we'll pop the okay, that feels okay. It's actually quite a firm thread. Originally it had Loctite on it. I'm not going to re-Loctite it because I've got oil there, so I'm pretty sure that won't ever come out. And that should move up and down. So when the spool's in, and this, oh look, I forgot that. Dopey bugger. Okay. Bloody hard to get good help, isn't it? But yeah, a little tool that sat on here and clamped that down, and you could wind him up to hold that down, would be a good idea. But like everything, I'm planning on only doing one. Okay. Look, I think I'm just going to put a dab of Loctite in that one, just a tiny little bit. Just a bit of a handful. Try and centralise all this. By turning it with by hand, I'm pretty sure this O-ring inside there would have sat down nicely. I'm also trying to use the fattest thing I can in this hole, because if you use something thin, you can burr up the valve just a little bit. So and by using the shifter across the flats here, there's not a chance of breaking one of these off. Okay. Now I've got a little bit of fine paper here. I'm just going to make sure there's no little burrs or okay. All right, we'll blow that dry. And before that goes in, we have to deal with this little valve. Now, according to the picture, the spring goes in first, and you can see a little seat there. There's a nice tapered seat there. So we need to put the new O-rings on first. Yep. Okay, we'll get the new ball. We'll put a new one on the other one too while we're going. So that's how it should be. And that's how it would have been, but I just could not find that damn thing. A bit of oil on him. to use the plate to help slide that in. Alright, so we'll oil the spool right up. Oh shit, dopey bugger. Spring, ball, retainer. Then this spool should slide in there. Nicely. If we didn't have the camera here, I'd have this up in the vise, but it just doesn't sort of lend itself to that where I am here. Bring that around, hold that down. I'll start these screws. And as we do this up, we have to make sure that this sits down. Yeah, I think that's okay. So we have to have spring tension now. It looks like it's coming up inside here okay. Looks nice and even on the front there. And the plunger's just sliding down. We're down past the O-ring there now. Nothing feels hard, doesn't feel like we're cutting anything or there you go. I think let's have a look here. I think there's just a sliver off that O-ring. There it is. Must be fairly firm in this back O-ring too, because it's holding it in the neutral position roughly. You've got to pull the whole thing out. You can't actually just sneak it out. This O-ring's good. Yep, that O-ring's good. But yeah, look, I think we've just cut this little fella. Well, I know we have. Just cut that edge. Okay, off to find a new O-ring. This little back one's good. All right, I'll get an O-ring kit and we'll try and put something else there. Okay, we'll try this little fella. Looks to be about the right size. Oh, get on there. There we go. Okay. Let's have another go. It feels like it'll go okay. All right. We'll try again. Got a few shadows happening here, don't I? But anyway, we'll work through that. And that's a bit closer. Yeah, that's going in better. So I don't know whether I didn't have it lined up or what the story was, but anyway, I buggered it up. Bring this up. That's a little bit of tension you can feel coming onto the plate there. Now there's little spring washers on those nuts, or those screws. So that's looking good. You can turn that and line it up, no worries, wherever you need to. No big deal there. Okay, so this little check ball here, let's give him a new one too. So we have the ball goes in, the spring goes in, and you don't get a copper washer in the kit for this, so I'm just going to use the old one. I don't imagine it's going to be a worry. Now I'm only doing that because the vice footage I didn't like. Okay, that's the valve pretty well done. Now this Welsh plug here, now this is not to seal oil, this is to keep dirt out. You can see there's a tiny little hole, there that comes out through here. And that's so at the end of this spool it can breathe as it turns left and right, it can breathe. So yeah, it's not going to leak oil there, but what I'd like to do is put that on the end of a socket. Get my brass punch, just because it's a punch that was handy. and that should put the concave back in there, so it sits in there easier now. Then that should stop that from coming out. And like I say, it doesn't leak oil, it's just to keep the dirt out. You have a little hole here, so where that bolts to the column, in the back there's a little hole. And that may have been where it was leaking, I don't know. But there you go, that's assembling the valve. All we need to do now is work out what we're doing with this here. So I'll have a look in my kit. So your steering wheel, like you don't have a lot of movement, and that's just too much. So you've got to have this really snug. So I'll find a drill, I'll find a pin that will do the job, and if it's a roll pin, I'll actually put the roll pin in and I'll put a little bit of wire through it to stop it ever coming out. And yeah, that's about all we can offer for that without going to buy everything brand new, which is all right for if you're a bloke like me that sells tractor parts, but it's not always like that, is it? Okay, this is just a quick clip on the finished valve. Now, what I've done, I've put a roll pin in through the hole there, and I've put a piece of wire, I've tie wired it in, and it's firm with the roll pin. The hole through the pin here was 4.1, or the hole through the valve and the end here was 4.1. The roll pin I chose was 4.2 something or other, and so it seemed to go in quite easy. It's firm, like both holes were worn the same, so it's worn okay with both of them. And yeah, now it's time to take it over to the tractor. We'll put it on, but yeah, that'll probably be the end of the video in doing up the valve. Next time you see it, I believe it'll be fitted to the tractor, and we might just run through adjusting it, make sure it steers evenly to the left and the right, and yeah, we'll just go from there. Okay, I need to tell you a little story. Okay, we've got the valve all sitting in place there, and whoop, you can see the turnbuckle. Now I've adjusted the turnbuckle so it is straight up, and so I have the same pressure on the gauge when I turn left and right. But I was doing that, and I wasn't quite getting the full revs, and you might notice a big oily mess around here, and it was only going to 1,000 pounds per square inch, and the tractor's only getting about 1600 RPM, and it should actually be getting around 2250. So I cranked him up to 2250. I got full 1400 pound on the power steering pump, but after about 3 or 4 turns, I had oil just pissing everywhere. And it already has steering cylinder leaks. So it was coming down the side here as well. I'll get rid of that torch. It was coming down the side here as well, just spraying everywhere. And what happened was a couple of the O-rings, once I got up to maximum pressure, a couple of the O-rings blew. The gauge here has shit itself. That's stuck right round full round now. That's rubbish. That started getting unreliable when I was doing the testing, and so it's for the bin. But if we come back round to where the valve is, the O-rings, I just grabbed some cheap O-rings out of a kit in between where the valve bolts on here and the steering column. Well, they just, one of them just blew out. And yeah, I don't know why, probably just poor quality O-rings, it was just a cheap $20 kit. So since then I've gone and got some 90 Duro O-rings. They're a harder O-ring, and yeah, it just seemed to fit a little bit better. So I popped the 90s in. I've had it right up to full smoke now, and it doesn't seem to be leaking. But yeah, the cheap little O-rings out of the O-ring kit that I put in there, just trying to keep the job moving, yeah, bit me on the arse. So I could get them in. I undid the 3 bolts here and just levered the valve away a little bit, enough to pop new O-rings in, so it wasn't a major job. But yeah, look, it appears appears to be going well. I have the same valve travel each way, and I can tell I've got the same valve travel because the pressure on the gauge goes to the same mark. But yeah, I'm now realising I shouldn't be trusting that gauge, so it's going to go in the bin. But look, that'll do for that bit for the moment. And all I had to do, oh, the little camera gets stuck on the magnet, to get it turning left and right, I had to loosen this lock nut. Where are we? Loosen the lock nut up the top there and just screw this up a little bit, because the top thread up there is fixed. This bottom thread, the valve turned when I turned it, and I just fiddled with that until I got the exact same reading left to right. So when we have a good pump on there, we'll know that yeah, it'll work as it should. But I still have to free up the kingpins. I put an order in yesterday for a new kingpin housing for the left hand side. You can see the leaks on the cylinder. I do have the kits for the cylinders now, and I believe the right hand kingpin that was seized, I've been pumping grease in there and oiling it up around the top, and I believe that's coming free a little bit. So anyway, we'll just see how we go. But yeah, the steering column part of the job's complete.